Welcome to the Radical Bureaucrat. It's Friday, and it's a podcast for people who want to change institutions from the inside.
That's right. Today is March 27th, and this is our 10th episode in 10 business days.
Yes, it is. Oh, boy.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of recording.
That's right.
We've interviewed 8 different people over the last 8 days. But we feel like that's a good amount. So today we're just going to do something different. We're going to slow things down and just have a conversation between myself and Abram.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm very excited about today. It's been really, really cool to hear from people all around the world, or at least all around the States and one person in South Korea. But yeah, I really have been looking forward to this. And we're going to borrow from, what is for many of us a reference point podcast, a place where people talk really honestly about the ins and outs of race in this country as we see it playing out. And that's the Code Switch podcast, which is an NPR podcast that's been around for a while. And Code Switch ends every episode asking about a song that is giving us life right now. And so we're just going to talk about some things that are giving us life right now.
That's right. And we're going to start that in just a second. But before we do, we also want to give listeners a sense of what to expect from our podcast going forward. The beginning of the New York City lockdown almost 2 weeks ago felt like the right time to go all in on this podcast and put out as much content as we could. But we're going to record a little less frequently going forward. Our plan now is to record episodes twice a week. So look for our content coming out twice a week, and we'll continue to bring people on for interviews similarly to how we've been doing things so far.
Yeah, we'll continue to bring guests on who can provide perspective or share personal experiences on how they're living out their values during this crisis. And as always, if you have any suggestions, please hit us up through Twitter. It's at RadBureau, at RADBureau on Twitter, and on our website, theradicalbureaucrat.com. But now let's talk about what's given us life, shall we?
All right, we're going to break this into 3 categories today. We're going to talk about what we're reading that's giving us life, what we're listening to that is giving us life, and what we're watching that is giving us life.
So so Sam, let's start with the reading one. And I think, I've been reading a lot of things, but then again, not reading that many things. And so what's something you've been reading that's bringing you life right now?
Well, I'm very grateful that my mom read a review a couple weeks ago by Junot Diaz of James McBride's new book, Deacon King Kong, and she very generously ordered a copy for me because she saw that it was in New York and it was about baseball. Baseball was a theme in there. It's not really about baseball at all. And so she got me the novel. And I've read, I think, 2 other James McBride books. He wrote a kind of the biography of James Brown, and he also wrote his own memoir. But this is the first novel of his I've read. And I just finished it last night. I stayed up to finish it. And it's fun. It's just it's a book that is a bit of everything. There's mystery, there's love story, it's gritty, urban noir, it's funny, it's also, a dark exposition of the inequities, racial inequities and class inequities in our society. And I look back at Diaz's description of the novel in his review, and I love this line he says about it. He goes, McBride doesn't just pivot from the humor to the agony. He seems to deploy both modes at once, and it speaks to his talent that he does so with dexterous aplomb. And I think that's right. Yeah. And McBride himself is a jazz musician, and he writes like a jazz musician. He's got these long riffs. So the writing is entertaining, and it was just it was fun, and it was a look at a specific part of Brooklyn, Red Hook area of Brooklyn, where McBride is from, in the late 1960s. And so I also just like that and of historical fiction. So it was a good read. Yep. So Abram, what are you reading that's bringing you life?
Yeah, so I wanted to share, I was excited to share this book that the book actually encourages you in the introduction, I think, to read it non-linearly. And I keep bringing this book up because I keep trying to get other people to start reading it because it feels to me so profound and useful. And even in a kind of oddly like spiritual way, it has a like calming and centering influence. A lot of different pieces of the text. The book is called Emergent Strategy, and it's by an author named Adrienne Marie Brown, who I wasn't familiar with until I went to a session at a conference, and she was talking also about a podcast that she has. Which I don't. I should look up the name of the podcast. I'll tweet it out later. She's on Twitter a ton at Adrienne Marie, ADrienneMaree. If any of you wants to rewind and replay that in your head. Interdependence is mutual dependence between things. If you study biology, you'll discover that there's a great deal of interdependence between plants and animals. Inter means between. So interdependence is dependence between things, the quality or condition of being interdependent or mutually reliant on each other. Decentralization is the dispersion or distribution of functions or powers, the delegation of power. Grounding in nature. I spent an entire year on this porch in Mississippi watching a family of geese. They get to give. Over and over, they get to give. Their style of getting and giving are particular to each bird, but they give every single day. They share and accept sharing with grace and so much style. I'm working on this every day of my life. Keezy Lehman. When Canada geese are migrating, they take turns at the front of the V, the turns being the leader, the weight carrier, and being the follower, the rester. When a goose is injured during migration, 2 geese will land with it and stay until it is healed or it dies, then catch up with their flock. Flocking is fundamentally about decentralizing the effort for safety and trusting leadership to come from any edge of the flock. When Hurricane Katrina slammed into the Gulf Coast, almost everything lost its footing. Houses were detached from their foundation. Trees and shrubbery were uprooted. Signposts and vehicles floated down the rivers that became the streets. But amidst the whipping winds and surging water, the oak tree held its ground. How? Instead of digging its root deep and solitary into the earth, the oak tree grows its roots wide and interlocks with other oak trees in the surrounding area. And you can't bring down 100 oak trees bound beneath the soil. How do we survive the unnatural disasters of climate change, environmental injustice, over-policing, mass imprisonment, militarization, economic inequality, corporate globalization, and displacement? We must connect in the underground, my people. In this way, we shall survive. Naima Pennyman. So this is a text that, I kind of have to take it in doses, and that's about a dose. I read this stuff and it kind of gives me this profound sense of meaning in it all. And there's pages and pages like that. And lots of footnotes, really fun footnotes if you're a footnotes type person.
Yeah. I did read Emergent Strategy a while back, but I need to go back to it because I think I read it incorrectly. I read it straight through. And it is, what I remember about it is it's a book for folks like us. It's a book for bureaucrats and consultants, but a completely different way of seeing the work. Yeah. And you get that from the passages that you just read. It's just asking us to.
Yeah. This is a different sort of book, is the sense you get.
Yeah, and it's not the type of book that we get to read for work or for graduate school very often, if at all. So it's a book that makes you kind of sit back and just kind of step out of all the paradigms that we've been in. So Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, Abram, well, here's the thing. There's so much to read, and we can be reading books, we can read articles, we can read whatever. You think we can share one more reading?
Yeah, I think we should. I think reading really should remain as the dominant form of information. I know there's a lot of ways to learn and get information, but I do think reading together and reading alone is of such value. So yeah, let's do more reading.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. Well, I got another one. So last week, you and I were talking, not on the podcast, and we were talking about what the quality of the content that we're putting out. And I said, well, there's a word for what we're doing. It's rascuache. And I had trouble saying what rascuache means in English. So I did a little digging. I did a little research and looked at Wikipedia. So actually what I'm reading to you is going to be from the Wikipedia on rascuachismo. And it made so much sense because the words that I have for it now, rascuache means making the most with what you have. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're doing here on the podcast. Mm-hmm. But it also feels like this is a moment for doing what you can with what you have. And people are doing that in all kinds of ways. I mean, remote learning is making the most with what you have. All the virtual work that people are doing, they're trying to find ways to make it work. And it's also recentering kind of what's important through that process. So, but here's the thing about rascuache that I learned that's so interesting. So it's a Spanish term of Nahuatl origin, which originally had a negative connotation in Mexico as being an attitude that was lower class or impoverished. Mm-hmm. This definition was later reversed by Mexican and Chicano arts movements, which have transformed the have-not sensibility into a specific artistic aesthetic, rascuachismo, suited to overcoming material and professional limitations faced by artists in the movement. It is the view of the underdog, this is a quote, which combines inventiveness with a survivalist attitude. And I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. Like this is the word for this moment and for us. And I think that to a certain extent, I don't know if this is right, but you and I both, I don't hear you call yourself Chicano. I don't know if you identify as Chicano or in some way you do, but I think of you as a Chicano from East LA. Yeah. My dad definitely identifies as Chicano. And so for me, I don't present that way in the world, but it's part of my heritage.
Yeah, it's in you.
And so what's that?
I said, it's in you.
It's in me. And so the Chicano arts movement is something that I'm familiar with, from the murals of California to the theater and movies of Luis Valdez to, just a whole range of things. So many novels, so much poetry, and so this notion of doing what you have, this artistic aesthetic, it's certainly not refined, and it takes pride in not being refined. And I wonder if, on some level, like we had that mindset when we started out. Like, we don't need this to be the perfect podcast. Certainly we want it to be, we try to do things. We try to put as much work into it as we can. But the most important thing is that we're doing this in the right spirit, not that we're necessarily putting it out as the most finished and refined product. So, this is the moment.
I think there's levels of that. I think season 1 was definitely a lot more time spent in the editing bay. And, for better or for worse, time wasted or time well spent. You can go back and listen to all the episodes and tell me. I think and this is an emergent strategy thing that I think I've learned in the time since the last season. That there's always enough time for the right work, and that the right people are the ones that are in the room, and the right work is whatever is the most powerful conversation for that group of people, you know? And this last
Mm-hmm.
week, that conversation has been just survival and like trying to get the lizard brain reeled in, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because that emotional limbic amygdala, you know, brain, lower brain part that like just is worried about survival and stocking up on sugary snacks, like we have to pay attention to that and give that thing space to calm down in order to get back to whatever the work is. And I think some people, you know, we're sent for a loop these last few weeks. And so coming back to what is really necessary, you know, what is really the essence of the work that I'm doing, and how can I drive it forward with the time and energy I have, and how can I do it from a place of abundance and not from a place of scarcity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rasquachismo is about
Yep.
making the best with what you've got, right?
Yep.
And what we've got is
That's
weird right now, but we can make some you know, where there's ruin, there's hope for a treasure, right? That's Rumi.
Right. Right. All right. So, Abram, what else are you reading that's bringing you life?
Yeah, so this got sent to me in a group text, and I just wanted to shout out my group text crew. I don't want to, you know, maybe I should do the Brooklyn thing and like shout out, you know, each of them and their nicknames. Lobutsi and Pookie from the block. But man, these group texts have been giving me life. People just sending something funny that they screen captured from Instagram that brings me a smile when I'm stressed, or something honest, you know, like, man, I'm scared about this. What's going to happen with this? So shout out to the group text. Shout out to those of you having drinks on a Friday or a Thursday night with your colleagues via Zoom or Teams or whatever it is. Just decompressing and figuring out what all of this means for us. That I think is some of the most important stuff we can do right now. That is the work of this moment. And so there's this in one of these group texts with one of these, you know, work homies, work family, people who I love. Somebody sent me this poem, which I guess had been making the rounds a little bit. I don't know. But the poem is by a woman from the Midwest named Kitty O'Meara. And it's called And the People Stayed Home. And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being and were still and listened more deeply and meditated. Oh, some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows, and the people began to think differently, and the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed. Yeah, the people stayed home. You know? Maybe we just need to slow down and pause, right? That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a lot of what we can do. You know, it's I think that's what people have been grappling with, and people seem to be bouncing back and forth between trying to find their equilibrium. But people have recognized that there's certainly an opportunity here to focus on self and family, you know, especially if you have the privilege of doing so. That's in there as well. You know, this is not a poem about the people that we're thinking about in homeless shelters necessarily, true. Right? Or in other kind of challenge situations and circumstances. But for those who can, this is a moment to take a breath. And
Yeah.
she puts it into words beautifully.
Yeah, and I think the assumption I'm operating from, and I acknowledge the privilege, of being able to have time and any kind of income coming in, because a lot of people don't have any income, and that's their main concern right now. A lot more people than ever in the history of the United States, right? I think it helps me to assume that if I can figure out myself and my, where I best enter the conversation, the great struggle to do better, then I will do a better service to those people, because I'm understanding me, and where my healing needs to come from before I got to put my own mask on before I put the mask on someone else, right?
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Let's not try to continue the rat race right now.
Exactly.
So let's move into listening, Abram. What are you listening to that is bringing you life?
So actually, I listened. I had listened just yesterday. We were talking to Becky, who I have the urge to call Dr. Tarla, but I won't. And thinking about the situation in Brazil, and looking at some of the background on her book and kind of looking into it more after we were off the air, it reminded me of the images in this music video, which is on YouTube, and I'll tweet out the music video. It's an artist named Ana Tijoux, who is a Latinx artist from South America, who I think Peru, Colombia, I can't remember.
Chile.
Chile, thank you. And Luchin, kind of to my ear, and you can tell me, Sam, with your Spanish, Luchin kind of strikes my ear as being like a nickname for a scrappy kid, like Luche is like struggle, and something in Luchin sounds like a nickname for a kid. And the video is like a lot of children and like the world through children's eyes. In a few different cities. You can't. It's not exactly clear what city it's in. At least not to me. So I'll play a little clip of it. It's really beautiful music, and the images, which you can get for free on YouTube, are, I think, really profound and for me healing. So yeah, just a really beautiful melody and tune, and really poignant images about urban life that I, get a lot out of.
Yeah. I love that type of song when it's done well. That will, with the soft music, the beautiful voice, and the nostalgia. Of something more innocent. So that's great. That's beautiful.
So yeah, what have you been listening to, or what are you listening to that's giving you life?
Well, this one was the easiest selection for me of everything we talked about. The song René by Residente, the Puerto Rican rap artist, came out a few weeks ago. And I was just in Puerto Rico in February. Gosh, I'm so thankful that we were able to go before this thing hit.
Yeah, crazy.
My family and my parents and I went to Vieques. And so I've been thinking a lot about Puerto Rico. I have a friend, a good friend from college, who is a scientist from Puerto Rico who's been tweeting a lot about the coronavirus down there. His name is Daniel Colon. If you want to check him out, you can Google him. But I've, Puerto Rico has been through so much, and now they're getting hit by the virus too.
Yeah.
And when we were down there, there was I was seeing and hearing a lot about people's mental health needs and the amount of depression that people have been dealing with as a society down there.
Yeah.
And so Residente came out with this song about himself, and it is both an ode to Puerto Rico, and it's a song about depression. And I love that. And it's also such an accessible song, because if you speak Spanish, he's rapping in a very, very clear language, very smart language. The lyrics are real tight. They're surprising. And the music is simple, but it's also elegant. And so it's just an all around, to me, great song. Now, I heard someone else be like, he's too intense for me. He's too intense. And but he is supposed, this is an intense topic.
Yeah.
And he does it quite well. And he does it, there's a nostalgia in this song too, because he's making a connection to his childhood through the song. And then bringing it back to the present, and kind of yearning for that innocence. And at the same time, admitting, being honest about, he was mentally very unhealthy.
Right.
So there's a lot going on in the song, a whole lot. And
right.
It's got a video as well, but I kind of like the song on its own without the video. The video is worth watching, but it's the song that really gets me.
All right, so let's have Residente give us a verse, drop some knowledge.
All right.
Desde pequeño quería ser beisbolista, no llegué así que aprendí a batear hits por encima de una pista. Volví a tomar alcohol en mi despacho. Escribo bien sobrio, pero escribo mejor borracho. Cuando caigo en depresión, mis problemas se los cuento. A la ventana del avión el estrés me tiene enfermo. Hace 10 años que no duermo. El IRS me sigue investigando. Me estoy divorciando, pero no importa, yo sigo rimando. Cometo errores, pero hago lo que pueda. Aprendí a aterrizar sin ruedas y, aunque en la calle me reconocen, ya ni mis amigos me conocen. Estoy triste y me río. El concierto está lleno, pero yo estoy vacío. En la industria de la música todo es mentira. Mi hijo tiene que comer, así que...
Yeah. I think that's his actual mom in the beginning of the song. It's certainly intended to be his mom, whether that's her voice or not. And so it starts off with her working with him to complete a school assignment that he's having trouble with. And so then she would sing it to him in rhyme so that he could remember. And then at the end, it goes back to that. And then it goes to Ruben Blades, and who he references in the song, playing the song out, going to the conga, and kind of a Afro-Puerto Rican, I don't know what the genre of music is, but a chant. So there's a lot happening there, and it's just an impressive piece.
Yeah, beautiful. I can't wait to give it a listen. All right, so let's close out, bring it in for landing. What are you watching? There's been a whole lot of streaming media, and I had the amount of money that we pay the cable company. Boy, don't get me started on a rant. But there's tons of stuff from Netflix and Disney Plus and CBS. There's all these services. What have you been watching? What's bringing you life, Sam? What are you watching?
Well, we got tipped a while back to the idea of, we should have a family sitcom, something that we all watch together. And so that show, some friends of ours said, the show that to watch as a family is Blackish. And again, my kids are 8 and 11, and it's worked out quite well. They both really enjoy it. My wife and I enjoy it. And since the lockdown started, we've been watching like 2 episodes every night. So it's not Netflix. We buy a season through Amazon, and we've just been going back because we're current on this season and last season, so we've gone back to the beginning. So that's just fun. It's a great show to watch as a family, and they touch on social issues, so there's always something to discuss as well. Kids have questions. And yeah.
There's some really good Blackish musical numbers too. It's some of my favorite stuff in the world
Yeah.
is the Blackish musicals.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
What about you, Abram? What are you watching?
Well, we just finished the show on Netflix, Hentified. And Hentified is a word that I picked up a few years ago from a friend in Oakland, who was doing some kind of thing with one of the big colleges, and he dropped this little nugget in my vocabulary, and I started saying it, and then I guess I was kind of I don't know how late or early to that party I was, but like I really started to see gentrification up close, because I had that was the year that I had moved to New York, and our first year in New York we got an apartment on the Upper West Side, and then they moved us out so they could do a building project to make a little more money on the apartment, and then the second build everybody has their New York City apartment stories, right? But then being in New York City and learning about what gentrification is and how it impacts communities and the dynamics that play out, is something that, these are stories that are very difficult to tell. And, I live in a neighborhood that at one point was a very firmly Italian neighborhood. And there were some European Jews in Spanish Harlem. And then, a lot came over in the middle of the 20th century from Puerto Rico. And like those different layers of new groups of people coming into the neighborhood have, only accelerated. And so what does gentrification really mean? How do you find the important things in your values, the things that you imagine handing down to your children in the midst of a changing neighborhood? And, the way that Hentified does it is it's all wrapped in signature East LA style comedy. And so it's, it's the most fun we've had watching TV in a little while. On My Block has a similar kind of West Coast hood life sensibility about it. But
so let me just can I just cut in there just so people get the name of it. So this is like Hentified, right?
Hentified.
Like the Spanish word gente.
GENTEFIED. Hentified.
Yeah.
Yeah, gente being like people in Spanish, like my people, the people, gente, Hentified. So yeah, it's about the struggle in Boyle Heights and the artists and burners and homeless tent cities and everything that's happening in Los Angeles right now. But, with this really great core of like these family first, Mexican-American family values that, just resonates and feels like home for me.
That's great. I think I saw a trailer at one point and then I forgot about it. So I'm so glad you brought this up because I need a new show. So that this is going to be good.
Yeah.
We will watch it.
It's a little bit bumpy. But lots of streaming TV is bumpy in the first season. So I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah. There's so I mean, all of Netflix is a little rascuache right now.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And we are now going into the depths of that library.
Yeah. So that's just the moment we're in. It's like we're not the refined stuff. The age of 4 channels and a movie theater is long since passed. So yeah, there's a lot more content, but it's not all what we grew up with.
Yeah. So
let's read us out.
Let's end by being good bureaucrats. The views expressed here are our personal opinions and do not reflect the official or unofficial position of any government agency, policy, party, leader, or really anyone besides the two of us, and maybe you, but maybe not. This content has not been sponsored or approved by anyone, and was mostly just made because we wanted an opportunity to talk about things that matter to everyone, whether they realize it or not. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Have a great weekend, y'all.